It was the worst day of my life, burying my eldest son, and somehow it still got worse. We were standing beneath the grey sky, a chill wind brushing through the cemetery as the priest read his final words. My wife clutched my hand so tightly. It felt like she was holding on to reality itself. My younger son, Michael, stood silently beside the casket, his face pale and broken. He hadn't cried, not since the accident. I worried he was bottling it all in. Just as the priest said, "May he rest in eternal peace," I heard the unmistakable screech of tires. I turned and saw a black and white patrol car roll up onto the gravel drive of the cemetery. Two uniformed officers stepped out, hands on their belts, their expressions unreadable. Everyone turned to look. I felt my blood run cold. What was going on? One of the officers walked straight toward us and said, "We got a call from a resident in the Oak Grove community. She reported a suspicious young man wearing a hoodie loitering near a gravesite." The words hit me like a slap. A suspicious young man, Michael, my son, my grieving 15-year-old boy. Before I could even respond, Karen Mathers stormed up the hill, a smug look on her face. She wore a tailored beige suit, high heels completely inappropriate for the terrain, and carried that signature clipboard she used to threaten residents over HOA violations. "There he is," she said, pointing directly at Michael. "I told you he was up to no good. I've never seen him before." And he was pacing around like he was plotting something. Everyone was stunned. The priests, the Maurers, even the groundskeeper, had stopped what they were doing. My wife gasped, stepping in front of Michael instinctively. I stepped forward, barely able to contain my fury. "Karen," I said, my voice shaking, "this is my son. We're burying his brother today. That boy you just called the cops on is at his brother's funeral." She didn't blink. Well, how was I supposed to know that? He looked suspicious, and hoodies aren't allowed in the community per HOA dress code guidelines. My jaw clenched. I turned to the officers. "You're really going to investigate a grieving child at his own brother's funeral right now?" The younger of the two officers looked deeply uncomfortable, but the older one seemed to hesitate. "He matches the description we were given," the senior officer muttered. I took a deep breath. I tried to hold it in, but there's only so much a father can take. That was when I pulled out my badge. "You see, I'm not just some grieving dad. I'm the Attorney General of the state. I don't flaunt it. I don't go around waving it in people's faces." But right then, that badge wasn't just a piece of metal. It was my shield. The moment the officers saw it, their entire demeanor changed. "Oh, Mr. Whitaker, we didn't realize." The younger one started, but I held up a hand. "I don't care if you realized or not. What I care about is that my son was harassed at his brother's funeral because someone on a power trip thought he didn't look like he belonged." Karen didn't back down. "Well, if you people would just follow the rules, you people." I repeated, my voice dangerously low. She faltered for a second, then tried to pivot. "I meant residents, homeowners. It's my job to keep the community safe." I walked up to her, locking eyes. "Your job, Karen, is not to call the police on children. It's not to profile people because they don't look like your idea of what's safe. You've overstepped for the last time." She scoffed. "You think you can do something about it? This is private property. I have authority here." I stepped even closer. "No, you don't. The HOA doesn't own the cemetery. The city does, and I happen to know the city prosecutor quite well. In fact, we had breakfast this morning before my son's service. You're standing on public land harassing a grieving family, and you just falsely reported a minor to law enforcement." Her face turned the color of chalk. "You're bluffing," she said, but her voice wavered. "Would you like me to demonstrate otherwise?" I asked because I'm one phone call away from pressing formal charges against you for filing a false police report, endangering a minor, and interfering with the funeral proceeding. The police officers shifted awkwardly. "Ma'am," the senior officer said, "we'll need you to step aside. We have enough here for a formal complaint." Karen's eyes darted around. The mourners were staring. Some had their phones out. One woman had even started recording. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," Karen stammered. "I was just trying to help." "You caused trauma." My wife snapped. "My son hasn't said a word in days. Now you've made him feel like a criminal for grieving." Michael was still standing there shaking. His hands balled into fists. I walked over to him, put my arm around him and said gently, "It's okay, son. You did nothing wrong. She's the one who's going to answer for this. Karen tried to slink away, but the officers wouldn't let her. They took her statement, noted the events, and advised her that she could be facing consequences. She kept trying to argue, but eventually one of them escorted her back down the hill. The burial continued, this time in silence, but the damage had been done. Later that evening, after the reception at our house, I sat in my home office reviewing the footage. A neighbor had recorded an entire incident. My phone buzzed. It was the governor. I heard what happened. He said, "Do you want me to step in?" "No," I replied. "I've got this. I'm filing a civil suit. She's going to learn what happens when you cross the line." By the next morning, I had submitted formal charges through the appropriate channels. My staff helped me draft the necessary documents, and I reached out to the press with a statement. I didn't name Michael. I didn't want him dragged through the media, but I made sure everyone knew what Karen had done. The backlash was instant. News outlets ran the story. Attorney General's son harassed during brother's funeral. HOA chairwoman under fire. The video went viral within hours. Parents across the country were outraged. Civil rights organizations reached out offering their support. Even members of the HOA board turned on Karen, issuing a public apology and removing her from her position pending investigation. But for me, it wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. A week later, Karen showed up at her door. She didn't have her clipboard. She didn't wear her usual smug expression. She looked tired. "Hello." She asked to speak with me. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You've got 30 seconds. "I'm sorry," she said, eyes downcast. "I didn't realize. I was just trying to be vigilant. That boy, your son, he looked like someone I'd seen in a police report." I didn't answer. I just waited. "I know now that I was wrong," she continued. "I've stepped down from HOA. I'm going to counseling. My lawyer's negotiating a settlement with your office." I nodded slowly. "I don't want your apology. I want to make sure that no other child has to go through what my son did. That's the only reason I'm letting this settle out of court." She looked up, eyes watering. "He didn't deserve that." "No one does." I closed the door without replying. Over the next few months, we worked to pass a new regulation, one that limits the power of HOA boards, especially regarding interactions with law enforcement and racial profiling. I gave a speech at the State House. Michael was there. He stood beside me as I spoke to a packed chamber. "This isn't about one woman's bad decision," I said. "It's about a culture that gives people like her the power to ruin lives under the guise of safety. We must draw the line between community standards and civil rights." The bill passed unanimously. Michael started seeing a therapist. Slowly, he began to talk again. He went back to school. He even joined the debate team. Said he wanted to be a lawyer someday like his dad. One afternoon, months later, I was picking him up from school when he asked, "Dad, do you think people like Karen will ever stop?" I thought about it for a moment. "No," I said honestly, "but we can make it harder for them to get away with it." He nodded, staring out the window. "Then I want to help do that." I smiled. "You will, son. You already have." That terrible day could have broken us. Instead, it became the start of something bigger. Because no matter how powerful someone thinks they are, the truth always finds its way through. Do subscribe to my channel.